Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hello, you're listening to the podcast, so there I was. This is episode 165. Goat hunters, jet jocks, and a $3,000 rifle.
Yeah. He opens with the tease on that $3,000 rifle. The rifle did survive, so that's good news there, right?
Yeah.
So,
and it got back to its rightful owner.
That's surprising and too bad.
Yeah, all at the same time. Our sponsor this week, we got HSI Wealth Strategies with Robbie Walling. You can give them a call at 214-538-7030. Again, that's 214-538-7030.
Jet 7030. Very cool. We've got our giveaway squared away because last month I had it all up and perfect and it looked great and the URL was wrong. And so I extended this month's giveaway from last month. We're giving away 4 copies of the book, Takeoffs and Landings, Memories of God, Family, and Country by Alger Pete Peterson, who spent 30 years in the Air Force. And this is his memoir of that time. Looks really cool, from 54 to 84 in the United States Air Force.
Something tells me there's probably a good story or two in there.
Just 1 or 2. Yeah, fantastic. So go to sarahwos.us/giveaway and share the show. There's different ways to share the show. Promote it on social media, email a friend, that kind of stuff. By doing so, you earn points. 4 people with the most points at the end of July will get a copy of this book. So thank you so much.
That is just outstanding.
So we had Chief Morrissey, retired United States Coast Guard, 20 years, 3 months, 4 days, 7 hours, and 15 seconds or something like that.
He gave it all the way down to the minute.
Not that he was counting, but he was a wonderful, wonderful guest. Another rescue swimmer, a friend of Quinny's. He put us on to him. That was great. And he opens the show right out of the gate, sliding down a Kodiak hillside in a dry suit, which felt more like a trash bag for all the grip it gave him, trying to save a $3,000 rifle. Screw the patient.
Yeah. I'm saving the rifle. Forget the patient.
That's right.
It's such a classic Coast Guard story too there. And, that one was outstanding. And then we've got another story from him where he's dropping into the Gulf to rescue 2 F-18 pilots after a midair collision.
Looks like you boys are going to get wet.
And actually, I got to correct that. It's not the Gulf. It was off in North Carolina.
Oh, that's right.
Because he was out of Elizabeth City, North Carolina for that one. That was another epic story. And he did a Seinfeld maneuver. He went out on a high note.
Yeah. So tune into that one. That's a great story there. But the one that amazed me is, especially how bad this was going, is he came out of a rescue more injured than the person he was trying to save, who they didn't think was going to make it. I mean, they were absolutely up against it, inserting all kinds of things into this poor woman, trying to keep her alive. And it turned out she had a bent finger at the end of the day.
Well, thanks to Chief Morrissey's efforts, she actually she had a stroke and had a near fatal encounter, but had it not been for Chief Morrissey's interventions, and he's a bit of a rarity too, and this is what a lot of listeners probably won't know, but he is actually a paramedic and not just an EMT basic, and as such was able to do a lot more interventions for this patient than were he just an EMT basic. And she is alive thanks to Chief Morrissey's efforts. And I think that cannot be understated. Yeah,
right. I mean, it definitely is. She would not have made it had he not done all the things he did, to include the IO line or whatever you called it. And then you threw all these other terms in there. Thanks a lot there, Sticks. The thoracotomy, the ALS, BLS. Okay, that's an easy advanced lifesaver, basic lifesaver, EIO.
Well, that's my sandbox. So, but it's, right? and we'll point out that, Fig is on vacation, so you guys got the B crew today, and you got stuck with me. So,
well, you just hit us with all them fancy words.
And then we got one last story from him, or one other story. We got a bunch of stories, but damaging $1 million sailboat during a rescue. and getting an air medal for it at the end of the day.
Right. Good job damaging that boat. Yeah, no, that's another one. I was horrified when he told us what happened to this woman. Like, oh my God. I mean, that just, that one gave me the willies. Like,
I'm hoping this is like one more in an installment of many more rescue swimmers to come, because these guys just have absolutely fantastic stories.
All right. And the stuff they do. I mean, those guys really talk about hanging it out there. They're literally hanging it out there and then jumping into ice cold water and climbing cliffs that no one should have to climb and dealing with waves and dealing with fire.
We even touched briefly on the Advanced Helicopter Rescue School, which is sort of what I would say is the Coast Guard equivalent of going to Top Gun for search and rescue.
Yeah.
Or your weapons and tactics. That is our school where you go to become the ultimate in search and rescue professionals. One other thing I think it's worthwhile mentioning, and I want to thank our listeners for being so patient. We have had some serious growing pains with our new platform, and this most recent podcast was only even horribly...
well, the first several weeks were self-inflicted growing pains. I'm stupid trying to get stuff figured out and how we're going to get it going. And then this week, we got kicked off several times.
Yeah.
And I actually think I've got a show edited and put together. There's a little disjointedness in there, and you'll kind of go, well, where did they jump from here to there? But that's why. We had about a 20 to 30 minute shot right in the middle of the show where we were offline completely. And then when we finally got back, of course, any and all of our audience had long since been booted. So
it was sort of like pausing our show for resuscitative CPR efforts.
Yeah. The patient survived.
Yeah, we got it back, but just barely.
Yeah.
So
noticeable damage you'll hear in the audio show. Shouldn't be too bad. The audio quality, I believe, is finally good this week, and we aim to keep it there.
We will get there. So we appreciate everybody's patience, and these stories are epic, and I don't know, Pete, but I think it's time for us to get out of the way.
Yeah, I think we get out of the way until next week. Don't leave your rescue swimmer behind. Don't do it.
Unless you have to. I've done that once.
Smallest cockpit, on the tanker, through the weather. Oh, and to the tanker crew who did that. Thanks a lot. We really appreciated that. I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond.
So there I was, as I was looking at the buttstock of a LaRue 308 AR-10 with the H-60 hovering in the background. Other swimmer tending a trail line to get a patient off the side of a cliff. As I realized I'm losing my footing, I'm sliding down the hill, trying to save a rifle and save myself, wearing a plastic bag for a dry suit. Not getting any traction, decided to dig the rifle into the side of the cliff, and realizing that it's probably more in that rifle than I can make in probably 2 months. So that's just one of the Kodiak stories that I could tell you about being stationed in Kodiak. Very unique story about being a swimmer up there.
Oh,
and
man.
That's how all great Coast Guard aviation stories begin. This is Styx here. I am stepping in for Fig, who's on vacay. So I'm sitting here in the wonderful state of New Hampshire. Where's my co-host?
I am also home in New Hampshire. Very good to be here. Glad you could jump in here with us today, Styx, to fill in for Fig, who is a slacker. You hear that, Fig? You're a slacker. Let's see if you can come back.
Slacker.
And we are proud and honored to welcome retired Chief Petty Officer, United States Coast Guard, Chief Claude Morrissey, who has 1 or 2 rescues under his belt. It sounds like the rifle might have recovered, but man, not.
Thank God.
Right.
So there I was first. We're in a 2v1 Coast Guard versus Marines with the favor going towards the Coast Guard.
Well, I'll take it easy on you guys, not to worry.
My kids, my youngest is going to be a Marine, so he wants to be a pilot too. So
there you go. Good, honorable goal. So, well, how is it that you decided to go into the Coast Guard?
Why'd I go into Coast Guard?
Yeah.
Well, I was praying real hard in church one day, and God says, you want to be with the best crews in the world, best helicopter pilots in the world. best pilots join the Coast Guard. That's what he came down and told me. That's another there I was. No, man, I was 22 years old and I needed a life change. So saw the little orange helicopter flying up the beach, and this is in late '98, summer of '98, in New Jersey. That's God's country, and it dawned on me that I could probably do that. Not fly them. I mean, I'm all thumbs with my hands, but as far as being a crewman, maybe. And that's what kind of got me hooked, you know?
Okay.
So,
Sticks, was that you flying up that beach in '98?
Could have been.
No, actually, not '98. So since you're alluding to the fact that you're from Jersey, what exit?
So exit 28, North Jersey. And
okay.
We were just talking about it yesterday. Some family coming down to vacation, and that place hasn't changed in 50 years. Congested mess, you know? So.
My family grew up in Connecticut, so we spent a lot of time traipsing back and forth between Jersey, exit 36 off the Parkway.
Yeah.
You all of a sudden decide that you're going to get into the Coast Guard. So what drove you to that? I mean, I get the whole story of being in church and going, I want to do this cool thing, but what's more, but there's got to be more behind it than that.
So I was 4th of July week, I was working for the power company with my dad. He was a foreman. I was basically a utility worker line apprentice, and trying to become a lineman, and there was just no schools going on. And, I just got fed up. It's been 4 years of the rat race. I was a volunteer firefighter, EMT, and I was like, it's like this whole thing with the, so I went back, told my dad, I said, Dad, I think I'm going to join the military. I said, I'm joining the Marine Corps. And he was Army. So he's like, hey, damn Marines. He went on and on. And his buddy, this guy, Paulie Williams, a tunnel rat in Vietnam in the Army. He goes, how about the Coast Guard? I'll never forget. It was a hot day. And this is when we were all in the office. I looked at Paulie. My dad wore glasses. He looked up and he goes, yeah, the Coast Guard. I said, what are you two assholes talking about? Like Baywatch type shit? And he's like, no, yeah. But they got like boats and they do like drugs and they rescue people. I'm like, let me call it up. So I called up the recruiter. And this guy's name is Ted Finney. And Ted Finney was a guy that pushed the two FFCLs back in the old 65, the A models, pushed them back online when they were going to do an auto rotation, got an air medal for it. Well, I go in the office about a week later. I had to make an appointment to go see him. He's like, I don't care if you come back or not. I met my quota for the year. So it was almost like a challenge. I'm like, all right. So I went in, lost some weight. It's a pretty heavy kid. I was good looking, but I was heavy. And I'm handsomely heavy. That's what I say. That's who I am now. So handsomely
nutritionally gifted.
Yeah. So, man, I went in, I want to drive the boats. I want to fly the helicopters, and I get seasick. So I said, I better become a rescue swimmer for some odd reason.
Okay.
There I am. Rest is history. 20 years went by in a snap.
So did you manage to go in and go, I imagine you didn't go direct to A school. You probably had to
I went in and I wound up on the best boat in the entire Coast Guard. It's called the Cutter Cleat out of Philadelphia. It's a 65-foot harbor tug. We just sailed around and partied for 2 years of my life. I mean, we partied. I mean, we went to every port. I mean, from Portsmouth, Virginia up to like New York. That's all we did was just go. Supposed to break ice with a 65-foot tugboat. We didn't do much. Did a lot of law enforcement. Did some ATON, aids and navigation work, fixing buoys, putting them back on station. Very little. And just had a great time. I had a 7 chief boatswain as a OINC, a BM1, all enlisted crew. It was pretty wild, man. It was wild. It was the best 2 years of my life.
Very cool.
Besides being a swimmer.
Yeah, well, how'd you wind up doing the swimming thing? Because as you may know, Chief, that's hard.
Yeah.
That's not something you just go, I think I'll do that.
You just got to live your life 30 seconds at a time sometimes. If you make the next 30 seconds, you'll get the next 30 seconds. Basically, I was on a DC list, and I saw that I just kept having a draw towards aviation, and it just seemed like it was a fit for me. And I had no idea that the adventure was going to go to A school. I was in Philadelphia, and I got a call on Easter weekend. I was on duty from the detailer. Like, I'm going to send you to Elizabeth City, North Carolina in June. And I was in Philly. I'm like, so I started working out pretty hard and trying to get back in shape and running and push-ups, sit-ups, what you can do on a boat,
Yeah.
And I get there June 3rd on a Monday, and they PT me in the humidity of North Carolina where I live now. And I really thought I was going to die. I said, I don't know what I did to you, God, but I lost a bet somewhere. And I mean, I went
You
from
listened
about,
to me and went into the Coast Guard instead of the Marines. That's what you did.
yeah. Yeah, my little guy's going to the Marines next summer. So he's going to be about this time going into boot camp in Paris Island. So I'm pretty sure he's going to be saying, what did I do? But no lie. So there I was sweating. I lost about 70 pounds when I graduated summer school, because summer school was there at Elizabeth City at the time. And it was 30 seconds at a time sometimes, 10 seconds at a time. What's the next 10 seconds going to bring me? I get past the next 20 seconds, 30 seconds. I know it sounds kind of maybe childish or I don't know, cliche or whatever, how you say it. But sometimes that's in a rescue. It's the same way. If you're flying too, what's the next 30 seconds? Where am I going?
That makes absolutely perfect sense, because when you're in that kind of environment where there's just so much stuff going on and you're dealing with all of these pressures or just the physical pain of what it is, I'm not worried about the next hour. I'm worried about the next minute and then the minute after that. And then what you need to do, you're just kind of going, all right, well, I just have to get through. You just don't envision yourself quitting. And I think when we had Quinny on, that's almost exactly what he said. You just don't entertain that thought. You just have to get through whatever that next moment is.
Yeah.
So my life in Elizabeth City was a living hell because of Quinny. Because Quinny was a God's gift to the aviation rate. I mean, as ASTs, he was fit, he was stout, he was a good swimmer, he could do pull-ups. And he'd be like, hey, fatty, Morrissey, Quinny could do 40 pull-ups in a row and then drop down off the bar and do another 40 chin-ups, And I said, if I ever meet this Quinny guy, I'm gonna pound the shit out of him. Of course, we make it through, and I consider Quinny a very, very good friend. I call him and I break his chops, and he breaks my chops. Just an all around great dude. He's doing really good things for the rate, really good things for people, especially with guys that have been through the mill. Tune into his stuff quite a bit, and I relive my memories, and it's pretty cool.
Fantastic.
Yeah. He's an animal. He's
animal to this day.
Yeah.
I mean, to this day, absolutely. He's just a great guy all the way around. So,
So a question I have for you. So we'd walk us through a day at A school.
Well, A school was kind of different back then. We lived in a place called the Donut, Elizabeth City. It wasn't known for its air conditioning or heat. You're kind of we wound down, I think, 5 other guys after a couple of weeks. Your first couple of weeks, you have a really big class, 12, 13, 14, 15 guys. Guys come in, guys leave. And after the first phase, after about the third week, you're with 5 guys you'll be with for the next 20-something weeks of your life. So you're eating, sleeping, breathing, all the same air the whole time.
And that gets pretty special sometimes.
Yeah, it does. And there's a lot of fights. And we had an exchange student with us, too. He was he's a great guy, but he was from Estonia. So he was talking on the home country, middle of the night, in some kind of Estonian, So the day in life at A school, you wake up and, you get a pit in your stomach because you don't know what you're going to get into. You're just going to get, you're going to go in and you're going to do something. You're going to get through something together, but you just don't know what that something's going to be. And they were really creative about creating stuff, whether it was a 15-mile run, whether it was, swimming across the sound, or whether it was, doing a multiple, pilot ejection in the pool. You just you never knew what they're going to give you, but you always knew you'd get through it. And that's the best way I can describe it. If you're doing underwater laps, you look at the guy next to you, you give a little smirk, and you go down and you do your underwater lap, and and then somebody jumps on you. Whatever was going to happen, it's just you had to be fluid with what you had to live in a world of chaos. As Butch Fly said, element of calm in a world of chaos, and that's the God's honest truth. That's what they instill in you at school. So.
How long did it take you to start developing that cohesion, though, as opposed to worrying about yourself? When did you realize that you had to work as a team to get through this?
I don't think there's any one thing as a team. I think it's support, because when you go out there, you're alone. So there's no
sure.
The team thing comes when you're in a helicopter, when you're on a helicopter crew. After your first couple SAR cases, that's when the cohesion of a team comes in. But you knew you had to support each other in the pool where you could, because you're there alone. So there you are in the middle of the night, right? So there I was, middle of the night, all alone, Yeah. But after about the first phase, you kind of realize you're going to have you're really going to have a good class and you start confiding in each other. So I'd say the first 4 weeks.
Okay. So how many phases are there to it?
There's 3 phases. There was the first phase, second phase, third phase. First phase is kind of your life-saving skills, getting in shape. Second phase is more technical, getting ready for parachutes. We sew as rescue swimmers, so we had that part to worry about, our stitching's correct and everything else. We do paraloft stuff.
Okay.
And then third phase is all multiple scenarios where they, pilot ejections, multiple rig, like they try to simulate stuff, but you can't really simulate a rig explosion until you're on a rig exploding. You can't really simulate that, So,
well, yeah, you're not wrong. In terms of simulation, one of the things that I had done briefly is I had worked on a New Jersey EMS state task force, just sort of like a mass casualty type unit. We were looking for like a training type event, so we ended up selecting Ozfest, which was 3 days of heavy metal music and short of creating your own natural disaster. That was the best training environment for a mass casualty event.
So you had 3 phases, and start to finish is about 12.
So each phase, first phase is 4 weeks. I think the next phases are 8 weeks.
Okay.
So we started January 2nd of 2001, and we wound up finishing end of April. I think April 4/20 for those guys.
Okay.
For those that partake in that.
For those guys.
So good day to remember.
Yeah,
so.
But I'm guessing you didn't celebrate that way. Just,
No,
just
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure that and I still don't, which is a shame. But people say weed would do good for me, but I'm not that guy. So.
Yeah, I hear you. So cool. Back up for 1 second. It may seem obvious to some, but A School is your rescue swimmer course that you have to take to become a certified rescue swimmer. And let me ask it this way. Does that just give you a license to learn how to be a rescue swimmer?
That's what I always told people. I did a short stint at the schoolhouse as a chief, and square peg round hole for me because I'm more of an operator. It's the license to get out there with some good mentors in the field. They screen you and you're ready to go out and learn. And you go out and learn from, the guys that are fixing the helicopters on up to the guys that are in charge of the air station. Pilots, everybody's teaching you something when you're new. Sure. It's a pipeline, I call it a pipeline training, 4 months to airman, 4 months in school, then you have, at least another, EMT school after that. Then you have another, at least, another 6 months of just learning the helicopter, being a basic air crewman, and then being in a swimmer. And plus you're learning your job, you're learning your rate. So, but everybody's there to help. I went to Air Station Houston and I couldn't ask for a better shop. 6-7 guys standing duty, lots of duty to be stood. Like I said, in the thing, I was at war with the American boating public for 20 years of my life. Every fourth night, they were trying to kill me, so that's all I could say,
Right.
So,
nice. Okay. So what did you find most challenging about A School? What was the hardest part of this?
I think that pit in your stomach, not knowing for 4 months of your life, am I going to be on that wall? Is my picture going to be up there? Am I going to get a number? And your limits. Where's my breaking point? And is it going to be today? Am I going to get that break? Everybody has that breaking point. Sure. I don't care how good you are. You're going to know where your weakness is, whether you ever internally say it or externally say to people, where your limits are and you know what you can deal with. And you've been pushed past that limit usually. So it's okay. Now, that was my thing and after the end of 4 or 5 months, you're tired. So, I was ready to be done. I was ready to heal. I was ready to, I was in the best shape of my life. I was 215 pounds and now I'm 315. So it's probably 25 years and 100 pounds ago.
Right on.
It's a great life.
So, well, then what was the most fun or the easiest part that you look back on that, seemed to challenge others? Like, for instance, I always did well with swimming. I grew up from the time I was 2 or 3 years old. I was getting thrown in the pool and my great-grandfather was a championship swimmer. Grandfather was, yada, yada. Yep. But so the water I was just always so comfortable in, and other guys found that really hard. What part did you find easy that other guys got
So I didn't mind. I'm a bigger dude. I'm 6'5". I was, 270 pounds, twist steel and sex appeal, when I went to school. So I was in pretty damn good. I was big. I didn't mind it. Like you said, my uncle threw me in the water. Actually, my wife's nephew came with his brother. I'm trying to teach a kid to swim last night. I'm like, take that life jacket off, throw him in. He's 4 years old. He's ready to go swimming. And everybody's like having a fit. And I'm like, let me do it. I'll teach him to swim. They're like, no, no, no. He'll drown. I'm like, no, he won't. I'm telling you, let me do this. The water confidence was definitely not, I didn't like doing the lap swimming, but I love the technical part of getting grabbed and stuff like that. I mean, it wasn't comfortable until you learn the techniques. But it didn't mind me having somebody on me. You know, we're going to go to the bottom, we're going to sort it out. Somebody's going to run out of air, whether it's you or me, we're both going to come up. So, you know.
Okay.
I like the challenge of it. I like the multiple scenarios. You know?
Oh, that actually sounds like fun. So
I want you to step back 1 second. So, I mean, you're talking about multis. I know what you're talking about. Those who are unanointed to the rescue community don't understand what multis is all about.
So the word multis is multiple survivors in the water. That's one of your biggest, scariest. For a helicopter to pull up on scene and you see like the Alaska Ranger where there's 10 or 15, 20 lights strobing and they're scattered across the ocean and you're like, oh my God, time to go to work. It's multiple survivors, multiple people in the water. That's what we're looking at. That's what we train for. Worst case scenario, 5 people on a fishing boat that are in a life raft. You got to swim out of the life raft, get that helicopter. So multiple survivors. And it's a scenario. It could be a rig explosion. It could be a sinking sailboat. It could be a fishing boat that exploded. A rig exploded. Helicopter crash is one of my bigger ones in the Gulf of Mexico. So, you know, lots of people is what scares you because you're in charge. When you get down there, you've got, you know, they're okay. We're rescued, and you're like, oh my God, I got to get these people out. You know, you're 270 miles. One of the cases, you know, you're 270 miles offshore and you're telling people to get in the ocean. Well, if you don't get them out of that ocean, if you're telling the guy to jump to you and you don't grab him in time, he gets swept away and you run out of fuel, it's a big deal. You killed somebody. So you really got to be on top of your game the whole time.
Right.
So,
that's what the swimmers train for, you know, to the level to which you train. And that's, you know, I think, you know, people sort of figure, okay, yeah, you're standing duty and we'll get to that. But like just on a readiness perspective, tell us in a given week, what was your week look like so that, because you come through A school and that gives you just the platform. That's your starting point. That's your base.
Yep.
And because going forward, we're going to put you in the water and I'm going to be relying, as the pilot, I'm going to be relying on you to get a hold of that survivor and get him to the basket and do that 7, 8, 9 times until the job's done.
Yep. So that, you know, when you look at the air station in Houston, you're standing a lot of duty. You're encouraged to stand duty very quick. You want to trial by fire down there. You're in a shop that's got a chief standing duty. Somebody's always sick, somebody's always on vacation, and somebody's always flying. So that leaves 2 other guys in that lineup, 3 other guys in that lineup to take up the slack. So at a small air station, you stand a lot of duty, do a lot of flying. And you look forward to that. You know, you look forward to them flights, training flights, everything. And then, you know, your duty nights is where you come together as a crew and you hopefully you break some bread, go to sleep. You know, you're going to get woke up in Houston. You know, you're going to go to work. You know, you're going to have a rig. You're going to have something to do with an offshore rig, whether it's a medical emergency evacuation for a medical reason off a rig, a helicopter crash, a kid that gets swept away off the jetties, or a fishing boat that's just got to be dewatered, or somebody having appendicitis. So the week of that is very important. But like you said, when you go out as a crew, you're talking the whole time. You're trying to figure out your best game plan. What kind of boat is it? You try to get the intel, where we're going to put the swimmer. Are we going to put the swimmer? Is this going to be a basket hoist? You know, which you always hope for because it's quicker. Now, you want to get that person from the emergency he's in to the back of the helicopter and start to stabilize him. So that's always been my goal. How fast can we do that? Do I really have to go down, or can we just drop the basket? And 9 to 10 times you got to go down because you got to get the story what's going on. So you get lowered, get the guy in the basket, or get the guy to the ocean, a life raft, whatever it is, get him back, start triaging him and taking care of him. And their life's getting better from that point, hopefully, you know? And, so I guess, but the pilot has the ultimate say. We have the ultimate say if we're going to go or not, but pretty much the pilots, I've been in situations before where I haven't gone down, and because it was a best case scenario for what can go on, you know? The fastest way to save somebody. And can it be done without putting another life in jeopardy?
Okay.
The thing that was impressed upon me after I came through my aircraft commander syllabus was if you're putting the swimmer down, you have to be able to, you need to make sure that you have 100% way of getting him back.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that seems like an important part of the evolution.
We're not worried about being left on scene. We're pretty rugged dudes, you know. We're pretty rugged female and males. Anybody's made it through. We kind of want to have that story. So there I was.
So there they went. Crap.
But you know what's funny is I have left my rescue swimmer on scene, and
nice one way.
And I left one behind when I left for a SAR case, but that's another story. So, anyways,
that's okay.
I left a swimmer on scene, and I remember I had like my flight mech write down the position. I wrote the position. I had the co-pilot write down the position. I passed that position back to the OPSEN. If I could have had it tattooed on my backside, I would have, because there was no way in hell I was going to get back and go, shit, I forgot the position where I left my rescue swimmer.
Yeah.
So, and that was Randy Rice that I left on scene. But and it really probably wasn't even that bad, because we at Atlantic City we fly 2 B-0 aircraft, which are 2 ready aircraft. We had about 9 people offshore that we needed to get about 100 miles, which, you know, zip out. We put our swimmer down. There was already a raft in there. We got 3 or 4 out, and then basically the second B-0 aircraft launched about 30 minutes behind us. So we pretty much high-fived on the way back.
And did you leave them with some kind of marker beacon so that you could find them in addition to that? Okay, just asking for a friend. Yeah,
there's a whole checklist for it. That's in our playbook. It's not a play that I remember looking at that going, that's not a play I ever want to make.
Right.
But you know, you ended up doing it. So
I used to like being left on scene, but the best thing is sometimes, you know, if you're not, we had a helicopter crash in Houston, late July, super hot. So they come up into a hover in the old B model and didn't have much power. So next thing I know, I'm in the door and they go, Mr. Durrell goes, hey, when we tap you, you're going to go. We're not doing 3 taps. We're just going to, you're going to go. After I'm falling about 40 feet out of the air, you know, because they just kind of pushed me out, and I slam into the ocean and I swim up to the raft. And the guy's got broken backs.
Some tap in the ass with a boot.
Yeah, no, just throw you out. Next thing you know, you get shot down there, and it's crystal clear. You can see down. And as you come up to the raft, you realize there's a big shark underneath. And the shark could have been 2 foot long, but to me, it was the biggest shark in the world. So I jumped in the raft. You know.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then you're left there, and you got the shark, and the 47's going to come get the guys that you're there because they're looking for another guy in a helicopter, and you're there all alone for 20 minutes, and there's a shark underneath, and you're like, is that a hole in the raft from where my fat ass went in? You know, you start thinking. So, because I'm not going to be fish food. I'll let the other guys be fish food, right? So, you know,
and that was in the 65, right?
Yeah. So
for those who don't know, that, you know, was that, I'm assuming that was under the Bravo model.
Bravo model between the Alphas and the Bravos, and now it's Echoes.
Right. God. Yeah. The big difference there is that in the Bravo model, we had the 2C2s, which gave us about 125 to 150 shaft horsepower additional per engine. And the difference is in a Bravo model, you could pull up into like a 5-7 foot hover on a hot day and be pulling about max power. In the Charlie model, you could pull pitch or pull the collective and be in a vertical power takeoff and be climbing through 1,500 feet in about 1 minute. So,
damn.
But it was interesting because as Bravo model operators, we learned how to manage our power really well.
Yep. And that's one thing I always said, when you get a 65 pilot and a 60, it's like a dream come true because they could fly the hell out of that helicopter. An H-60 is a very capable helicopter. And then when the pilots would come from the 60s and 65s, they would rip the guts out of the 65, you know? So, but
yeah, there wasn't much left of it.
Yeah, when they're done with it. Yeah, here you go. But,
Chief, do you remember your first rescue? How'd that go?
I do. It was my first water rescue was in Hurricane Claude, and this was 2003. I had been standing duty for almost 2 years, and I'd still had yet to get, I did a bunch of medevacs, did a bunch of inland SAR, but I'd yet to be deployed to the water. And Hurricane Claudette came down as a Category 1 hurricane. It hit landfall in Beaumont, Texas. 2 Vietnamese guys were coming in, hit the jetties with their boat, sunk the boat in the jetties somewhere, and they were tied off to the boat somehow, and we went out as a crew. Brian Kostecki and John Scott and Aaron Notchless. So say broke my cherry to get wet. And it was pretty cool, to see them guys and their sheer terror. I've done medevacs, and it's like, okay, we're going to get you to the hospital. I've done some rig evacuations, okay. But to be in the water with another human being, and you're in charge of that man's life, and you're cutting lines free of them, and you're getting the helicopter, it's pretty wild, very wild. So that was a very noteworthy case. It was right around this time, probably 20 years ago. Well, no, 22 years ago. Man, time flies.
Yeah, it was in July of 2003.
Yep.
Yeah, so 22.
Yep. Yep. And, I've always had a lot of good cases in July. I guess everything picks up. I earned an air medal in July off the coast of Cape Cod. You guys are up there in New Hampshire. So, but, yeah. So, but.
Well,
yeah.
July is better than jumping in the ice cold ocean, but I imagine you did some of that as well. So, how'd you get your air medal?
That was they have a sailboat regatta. Is it a regatta? Is it a race? I don't know, whatever they call it.
It could be called a regatta or a race, depending
how hoity-toity they are.
Yeah, these boats are way money. Long story short, it's July at the Cape, back at the Cape. I'm able to go out, and I think it was right before July. It's probably right around now. Went out in one of them sailboats. The lady had fallen, and she had basically scalped herself from the back forward. She had pulled her hair. So basically her hair was laying over her eyes, and somebody pushed it back up, and they put a bunch of duct tape on it. So it was in heavy seas. So I never forget, we were with the EO, we were with Mr. Atkins, very skilled pilot, very good flight mechanic. And we go out about 270 miles offshore and maybe 260. And we we lower down to the boat. Well, I don't know how these people are staying stable, because it's like 12-foot seas, 15-foot seas, and it's just disoriented, confused sea state.
Mm-hmm.
As I get to the boat and I rip off my first handrail and I fall into their fuel, and diesel fuel is gushing all over me because I opened up a jerry can when I fell. I'm ripping their boat apart, trying to get a litter down there. They're the happiest people in the world, but I think it was like over $1 million sailboat that I probably did at least $100,000 worth of damage because of my fat ass. So, I mean, I could not wait to get her off that boat and get her up in the helicopter so I can get off that boat. I jumped in the water and I felt like I was home again. I was like, thank God. But just to sheer how far it was in the sea state and what the sheer theatrics I did, it was like Tommy Boy. If you guys ever know Chris Farley,
sure,
it was just like me with the model cars, just smashing them together. It's just, so there I was, right? So it was a hell of a case. I really worked hard. I got to the helicopter. I grabbed the EO's flight bag and threw up in it several times, and then I zipped it back up. And he came to me about a week later. He goes, "Man, ever since I had that SAR case, the helmet bag stinks." Like, I don't know, Commander. Here you go. Here's a new one.
Wouldn't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So, but it was pretty cool. It was definitely. I don't think it deserved an air medal, but there's other cases I've been on that I said, man, I should get a Congressional Medal of Honor for this one. But no.
Okay.
It always evens out. I'm not taking any Congressional Medal of Honor by any means, saying the Coast Reserve, but it's just some of the things you're really going to do good at, and you don't ever get recognized. Other times you get recognized, but
sure,
it was a tough case for everybody. It was exciting.
Sure. So you brought it up. So what was your most difficult rescue?
Most difficult rescue was probably a stroke patient off a cruise ship. I was a paramedic at the time. I had another paramedic with me, and just everything that could go wrong from the get-go, from me falling down when I got to the boat, from me slipping down the ladder and breaking my knee, to to be, and you're always going to walk it off, right? And then you're like, you go to the medical about a week later, and they're like, yeah, get some x-rays, and you go get an MRI, and they're like, oh, you broke your leg. I'm like, oh my God, what do you mean? But we have courses in front of everybody, but just everything mentally, that was tough because we worked really hard, and the lady did make it with some minor, like a pinky or something, but just 3 hours of taking care of somebody's life and having the turns and having the husband right there, that was tough.
Sure.
Back of a helicopter, not knowing if you're gonna, because they had called up about 3 months later, and he's like, I was on the helicopter. I gave him my number because we really worked hard on that, and I gave the husband my number, and I says, just if you ever want to reach out, we're an air crew at Elizabeth City, North Carolina. Please reach out to me. And he called me. I was on duty as a paramedic in one of the small towns here. I was transitioning from being a swimmer to being an instructor. It's not really different, but it just giving up my wings was hard. Not giving my wings, stopping flying was really tough for me.
Okay.
But as a chief, you kind of got to step back and went to the schoolhouse. But he had called and he said, sir, I just want to let you know we did everything we can for your wife. We really try to do the best care we could. He goes, oh yeah, you guys did great care. And I'm like, okay. He's like, I'm like, well, it was a long flight and, things, I was doing really horrible stuff, putting IOs in. At one point we're doing CPR, we're pushing a lot of meds.
So what's an IO?
Those are huge. Those are some huge points. So she actually coded on you?
So we thought she coded.
Okay.
So my other paramedic started compressions, and I said, let me see what's going on here. So I started tracing leads out, and it's super loud, and Jeff, flight mechanic looks, he's a electronics guy. He goes, this is unplugged. So we plugged it back in. I don't think she necessarily coded, but she did have an episode of some sort. I don't know. She did have a stroke. We know that. I was so naive back then on what in the Coast Guard, but we had to put an IO in because we lost IV. She was a bigger woman. We lost the IV, like a 22 we lost. And we're like, well, we didn't lose much, but we lost something. So we put the IO in. We did.
So I'm going to interrupt you. I apologize, but so an IO is an interosseous line. So that is effectively take a Black & Decker drill and put a heavy, large gauge needle on it, and you're drilling into this woman's bone so that you can get into that, what we call the intermedullary space, or that space in the lower bone where you can now give IV fluids and medications. So it's like having an IV. It is used by like our special forces, our paramedics, so it's a quick, easy IV access, especially when you have somebody who you can't get an IV on. And if you're awake and alert when you're getting that done, it's pretty painful.
I was going to say, easy for who?
Yeah, she was intubated, thank God. But, at one point we thought we'd lose a tube, and it was just one of them things that everything that could go wrong went wrong, and you're able to adapt and overcome, and you look back on it, but it does leave a mark in your soul. And you're like, man, so anyway, I told the guy, I said, we were doing some really horrible things. And he's like, I'm thinking like she died, And I got to the hospital and the doctor's like, yeah, we're probably going to call this. So I went back to the helicopter feeling kind of defeated. Me and a paramedic walked back out. He was a paramedic here we took with us and flew back, somber flight back. Just it was hard. And I get a call like 2 or 3, 4 months later, whatever it was. He's like, oh yeah, she's fine. Betty's great. And we became really good friends. I'm like, oh my God. And she had a little deficit in her pinky. It was pretty cool.
So you were more injured in the wake of it than she was.
Emotionally wound up being.
You were assholes and elbows in the back of the helicopter trying to keep her alive.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's just anything that could go wrong, whether it was and it's not that's not the case you train for as a swimmer. That's just something that, that if God, I'm not, I'm a spiritual guy, but God put us there to save some lives that day, the whole crew. And It was awesome. It was a good feeling.
And the other thing you glossed over was the fact that she was intubated, which means you guys had an air tube going down her trachea into her lungs. Yeah. So keep airflow going.
Yeah, and we had one of the ventilators off the boat. I think we ran out of oxygen. It was just, we didn't run out. I think we let the tank run out, and it was just anything that could go wrong that day went wrong.
No. And I've been there. I've done critical care transport as a nurse. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah,
it's terrifying, is what it sounds like to me.
Was this at night or during the day?
It was during the day, thank God. But when we landed in the helicopter, it was at night in Norfolk General.
Okay.
It was a hell of a ride that day.
Right.
It was, when you walk out of that helicopter and you're tired, you've done something. I mean, you're always tired getting out of a helicopter because it's 10,000 moving parts in opposite directions, all trying to stay together. Something like that.
It's not out of you hour after hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the Coast Guard helicopter, like your regular medevac helicopters, are set up for this. They have equipment and everything is sort of organized back there. And that's their bread and butter, The Coast Guard helicopter is a big open box, so everything is out loose, hanging around.
Loose. And it's still tight. 860 is still tight. And you got 4 people back there. Well, you have you have 4 people counting the patient, and then you've got all your bags, all your survival gear. So it's like you're just the whole time you're sweating.
Yeah.
Like the one thing, I'm a sweater. Yeah. Yeah. You're in a dry suit and you got to keep it like 80 degrees to keep her warm.
Yep.
But you're just trying to, I think we wound up doing multiple IVs on her before we went to IO. I'm like, this is what the IO is for. Like, what are we doing? Like, we're spending, both medics are spending 10 minutes trying, let's get one, let's do this. And we needed that access.
You can put some meds down the endotracheal tube, but it's not as effective. So,
yeah. Yep.
And you can't give fluids. So,
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and you're doing all this on your hands and knees.
Yeah. Hands and knees on a broken knee.
It's hard to imagine, just trying to help put our listeners there in that situation, like where you were, because it's hard. That would be hard to appreciate. All right. That is awesome. And the other thing to realize is that our Coast Guard rescue swimmers, for the most part, are base EMT basics. So they bring BLS care and they do the best they can, but they're not typically ALS. So if you're going to go become a paramedic, there's a big step between EMT basic to paramedic.
Yeah.
And that's something that you have to do on your own outside of what you're doing within the Coast Guard.
It was 3 years. It was 3 years every night and every weekend going to school and getting ready to go and going to paramedic school and then another license to learn and have fun,
right.
But
yeah. And you probably have about 30 to 35 different medications at your disposal that you can use, which you have to understand how to use. You're putting in IVs. You know how to do intubations. You know how to potentially even do a cricothyrotomy if you needed to.
Yeah.
So there's
Scary
a lot
stuff.
there's a lot of, there's a huge chasm between EMT basic to paramedic. And, it's thousands of hours of training to get to that point.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, how about we take just a quick minute to thank Robbie Walling for sponsoring this show, and we'll come into Kodiak, Alaska stories.
So, there I was, staring at my retirement account, thinking, man, I should have talked to Robbie Walling at HSI Wealth Strategies about 20 years ago.
Oh!
I had a budget, a spreadsheet, a dream, but in reality, that's not enough, Fig.
Repeat, I've known Robbie for over a decade, and let me tell you, the guy's as solid as they come. In addition to HSI Wealth Strategies, he's an Air National Guard pilot. He's an aircraft commander in a C-130. He's sharp as a tack, and he gets us. Military and airline pilots aren't your average 9-to-5 crowd, and HSI isn't your average financial group.
Well, exactly. We're smart folks. Just ask us, right? I mean, we know how to plan a flight down to the minute. But planning a 30-year retirement, well, that's a whole different airspace there, man. And HSI knows how to navigate that.
On average, their clients end up with, get this, $1.5 million more than folks going it alone. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because HSI knows strategies that most of us were never taught. It's not about working harder. It's about working smarter. How many times have we heard that over our career, right?
And yet we insist on not doing it so much to ourselves, right? But here's the kicker. Look, right? It's not what you save. It's what you keep. Okay? Right?
Boom.
I mean, think about it. Between taxes and timing and the unexpected, because that never happens, you can lose altitude fast without the right plan. I wish I'd known that when I started out. But
right.
This is your chance to avoid the common pitfalls that you just don't think about without a solid financial planning background.
Right. I mean, you wouldn't fly a long-haul flight without a fuel plan, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you should know that. So why approach retirement that way? Because we're basically talking about kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
I talked to a guy, he's one of my peers, who has put money in all the right places, but had no idea that he was setting himself up for like a tax meltdown down the road. Smart guy. He just didn't have the right map.
Yeah, right. I mean, Uncle Sam has long fingers that reach way down into your pockets when you least expect it. Right? So let the professionals at HSI do what they do best so you can keep flying safely into retirement.
Yeah. Don't be a moron. Call Robbie at 214-538-7030. That's 214-JET-7030.
Or email him, robert.walling@nm.com. That's robert.walling, WALLING, at novembermike.com. Look, don't wait until your final approach to start thinking about retirement. Do it now. Your future self will thank you.
Trust us. Don't be that guy.
Don't do it. Call Robbie.
All right, fantastic. So we opened the show with you talking about being in Alaska. How long were you up there?
4 years, both airframes, H-65 and H-60. So,
okay. Okay.
One airframe was for a year, the H-65s. That was offshore Alpat patrols. Alpat was 65 based off a cutter, and that was a lot of fun. Go out, tie to a 378, and go out way offshore looking for illegal fishing or fish search and rescue, whatever they wanted. So,
okay. So 378, was that the length of the ship?
That's the length of
was
the
a boat.
cutter.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a high endurance cutter.
No
They're
worries.
gone now. I think the Philippine Navy has them. So,
okay.
Or they're shaving ladies' legs as razor blades. I don't know where they're at. So, they cut them up into steel. So,
well, hope it's ladies' legs.
Yeah.
Not dudes.
Yeah. Could be dudes' private parts. It's my
Man.
luck.
All
Come
right.
back as a
Show's over,
razor.
folks.
TMI.
I'll be shaving guys' nuts. So, I digress. Sorry.
It's okay. It's all
thanks
good.
for that imagery. We may never recover. Fantastic. All right. So how long had you been doing this when you got up to Alaska? Because I imagine that's some varsity ball up there all the time.
That was my 12th year in the Coast Guard. I was second, making first class. So it was yeah, man, it's a whole different world up there. You know, you may only get one good SAR case or two good search and rescue cases when you're up there, because it's people only generally call when they really need something up there. Okay. It's not like down here where it's just easy to come out, you know. And you know, a search and rescue case could last up to 3 days, 4 days for flying on a chain. You know, it'd be like the equivalent of going from like New Hampshire to Texas to pick up somebody that amputated their arm. Yeah, so it's pretty far.
Yeah, it's not uncommon to actually have like two helicopters going out on a mission and a C-130, with the C-130 going out in advance to pre-position fuel. You know, two helicopters going out, 4 crews, swapping out crews because you're going to fly into the bag in the process of just getting out to where you're going to stage the mission from. You go to someplace like Cold Bay, you know, from Kodiak, and that's, I have to think about that. That's like almost 900, maybe 1,000 miles or so.
Yeah, from Kodiak. Yeah. Yeah.
So
that's
it's just
got to be close to 10 hours in a helicopter.
You know, it's huge.
Yep. Lots of moving parts up in Alaska. But it's all worth it. But alluding to the case that I was, you want me to start talking about that now? Or
sure.
Yeah. That's good.
So we had got a call on a Friday, and I was the second swimmer. I just came back. We broke the plane we were in. We had went out to start up and do a fisheries patrol or something, and it's an H-60, and we broke in a chalk. So we were walking back up. And I'm like, okay. SAR alarm goes off for a goat hunter that fell 1,200 feet on a 2,500 foot mountain. Mountain Sultry. I think it was Sultry. I forget. South of the island. And so Trevor Salt was a new kid, and I look at the chief. It was Chief Charlie Fowler. He goes, "You want to go with him?" I said, "Yeah, I'll go." I said, "I'll at least get some video of him doing work, you know." Well, we get out there, and it's a sheer cliff. So it's, you know, this guy's wedged in some rocks, and his buddy's there, and you know, we're all basically trying. It's only like a 5-minute flight, so we get lowered down and get the litter down, and we're packaging him up, and you know, come to find out he's an Alaska airline pilot. Now he's a Coast Guard pilot, or he was a Coast Guard pilot, became Alaska airline pilot, flying jets, 737s. But they knew the lingo. They got us out there. We're able to get him packaged up in a litter. Trevor held the litter. I think I packaged the guy, or vice versa. I think maybe I held it, or somebody held the litter, and we got him in there. He was really beat up, punctured lung, broken femur, broken ribs, I think a shoulder injury, just really bad off.
So he was having a bad day.
Yeah, he fell really far. And he had this beautiful rifle. It was a LaRue 308 tactical AR. And I was like, man, this is a really nice goat hunting rifle. He was hunting goat.
Looks like you ain't going to make it, dude. Can I have your rifle?
Yeah. we package him up, get him up the helicopter. And Trevor is tending the trail line at this point. And I think we sent the other guy up first in a basket to save some time. Then we trail lined back down the litter, got him in the litter. This is foggy. This is like 15 years ago. And then maybe 12 years ago. But he gets up there, and then me and Trevor got to do a double, what they call I guess it's a mad poo. I clip into Trevor. Trevor gets clips in the hook, and we ride up together. But I'm looking at this rifle, and I'm just amazed by it. You know, I mean, I've never seen a rifle with such it's from Texas. You know, everything's bigger in Texas.
Yeah.
So next thing I know, as I'm sliding down in my trash bag for a dry suit, like 50 yards, trying to hold this rifle and trying to stop it, you know, hoping I don't break the rifle or break my ass. Trevor, I climb back up, and I'm like, I almost died. And he goes, I got you, big boy.
So everybody, there are going to be some issues in the audio show, and I'll put this in the intro as well. And we apologize for that. Riverside Studio is our recording platform. We had a learning curve. I think we're past the learning curve, and now they're dropping us off left and right today, like it's nobody's business. So our apologies for the discontinuity within the show. But when last we spoke, Chief, you were in a rubber suit sliding down a hill. With an expensive rifle in hand that you were trying to save. Did the rifle survive?
So Trevor clips me in. We go up the side of the mountain. Mighty H60's hoisting us up, and we're rock stars. We've done everything. We've done cliff rescues. We've done everything now. And then me and Trevor are riding up together. I got this AR-15, and I make sure the chamber's clear, all that stuff. But pretty dynamic case, you know, but almost losing my life to saving a life. Then go to the hospital. What's funny is, as a medic in Kodiak, we're like a unicorn up there. So the guy get there, and this guy, Troy Breverick, is like, hey, can you ride in with me? I'm scared on this one. I'm like, okay, I'll ride in, you know. But the guy's okay. I mean, it's just trauma, you know. We got an IVs. We got everything going. Yep. Get to the hospital, and it's funny because Kodiak's this way. The doctor goes, okay, the patient's pretty good. Hey, where were you hunting? I got a map over here. Can we look at where you're hunting for these goats? So I'm plotting it out. We're looking for billy goats. So I'm like, Doc, aren't you really worried about this guy over here? He's like, no, he'll be all right. I just want to pick your brain about where you're at. Everybody wants the intel.
He's trying to scope out his next hunting trip.
He got medevac. I think I went and visited the hospital like 2 weeks later, thinking he was going to yell at me for breaking his gun. His gun was totally fine. Yeah, Alaska was a wild time. I always say to guys, there's rescue swimmers and there's Kodiak swimmers, and you can get some bar fights over that with swimmers. They get really pissy about that. But
and the same thing holds true with pilot. I never did a tour up in Kodiak, and there's Kodiak pilots and Alpat pilots and Alaska pilots, and those who have not been there and not anointed. I'm not among them, and I would not claim to be one.
And let me tell you something. You flying through the DC area, I've been less scared flying in Alaska than flying through, you know, airspace of Washington, DC. So I think I'm more fear in Washington, DC, because stuff is coming at you really fast. But the rotor disc apart too. So definitely different. But
the scariest thing I've done in a Coast Guard helicopter was to land on a 210-foot Coast Guard cutter.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you could do that. I don't think that's crazy. Yeah. I've been there too. Yeah.
It's like, that's a 35-foot by 35-foot landing pad.
Yep. And what's your rotor
a rotor disc that's about 65 feet.
Yeah. Hanging up all over.
Yeah. So anyway, so you actually alluded to one other thing that I think we haven't really touched on, and did you go to AHARS?
I went to AHARS 4 times.
Okay. And what's that?
So tell us about AHARS and what that is.
Well, it was Advanced Rescue Swimmer School when I went through, but I think it's Advanced Helicopter Rescue School now, something like that. It's out in Astoria, Washington. So to get good training, they wait till like October and April, March to get them big waves, them offshore rollers coming in the Columbia Bar, where the Columbia River comes out, makes huge waves, great for training, doing cliff ops, bunch of caves there, doing cave scenarios. Swimming in the caves, just really the Super Bowl of search and rescue training is right there in the world. We have PJ Pararescuing go to it, other special forces from other countries go to it, to just indoctrinated to get your ass kicked for a week by big waves and heavy surf and doing cliff rescues and everything else. So
right. And that came about, if I'm remembering correctly, there was an attempt to do a cliff rescue with a swimmer who had a rescue strop that he was using. So he was effectively in a sling, and so he was not clipped in with a trisar harness like we currently fly with. And he ended up taking like almost 150 foot roll down a mountainside trying to do a rescue.
You flew with him.
Yeah, I know.
Patrick McHenry.
Yes, Patrick McHenry. There is actually a video clip out there. I actually have a video clip that I made that promoted Coast Guard Aviation as the public affairs officer, and I actually have his fall down that cliff in there, just to highlight, just what the risks are. And the other thing I will point out is, and you said it, and it was sort of nonchalant in the way that you pointed it out, but we go out there in October, starting in October and during the winter months when the weather is at its worst.
Yeah.
Because that's what we want.
Yeah, you got to train as you fight. That's one thing I tell people all the time. If you want to be a swimmer, you got to be. I tell you, these guys are studs now. I mean, they're built, they're professional athletes, and we were back then too. I believe it. But some of these older guys, like, I can still do the job. I'm like, no, man. No, you can't. This is a young man's world. It's a young man's world.
A young person's game.
And you hit in your 40s and you hurt a lot more than these young guys. These guys are going to – you can do the job. I'm sure we can go out. I can put my gear on. I can get some sort of rescue done. And that's just being from experience and taking stuff out of my toolbox. But I don't ever claim to be what these guys are now. And they'll never claim to be what I was. We were the Cowboys. We made my generation of rescue swimmers, Quinny and all them guys – the other guys had laid their great footsteps down, some great foundation, and they were animals back then too. And it just keeps evolving with every next step. It's evolving as a tree.
And that just rings true with all of the other cases and things that Coast Guard Aviation's been involved in particular, like Katrina.
Oh my God, I was there. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. So you got any stories out of Katrina?
Yeah, tell us about Katrina a little bit there. Yeah.
Everybody likes
Katrina. A helicopter beehive.
Yeah. I'll never forget when Ronaldo Rivera was like, we lost one of our own. It was some like transport helicopter. It wasn't even a 65. We got a Coast Guard helicopter. He was screaming, but
it was a Blackwater helicopter.
Yeah, it was something like that. Well, Katrina, right? So if you were there, you were there. If you weren't, it's one of them things. A lot of big awards came out of Katrina, but it was probably the easiest hoisting I've ever done. I was on a very stable platform. Yes, it was hot, and yes, there were some angry people, but there was nothing trying to kill me other than the natives of New Orleans. They wanted out of there.
For the most part, the houses weren't moving with the current, right?
Yeah, they weren't really moving. There might have some gas leaks, but and I wasn't there early on. I was there later on. So for me to say, it wasn't dangerous. It was urban search and rescue, and we had a ball at it. I mean, we would go out, hoist. I think my crew, we went out. We did a lot of. So I got there later. So we were doing a lot of the pulling bodies up on roofs, finding bodies, searching bodies. There wasn't a boat there. You go mark it, pull the body up with a boat hook, or however you get the body up on the roof. A couple of rescues off a roof that were really, 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 really like guys that had like diehard people weren't going to leave. So we got them. I did one going back offshore, doing a couple cases, standing duty for New Orleans on a 65 again. But all in all, like. It was just a Super Bowl SAR. I mean, I keep saying that. Maybe it's just a bad way to put it. And, we saved, 6,000 people, or what was it? Some crazy number,
Yeah, it's insane. It was literally like shooting fish in a barrel for search and rescue.
Yep.
You could just pull into a hover, go about 50 or, quarter mile one way and, save 7 people. That's pretty much what it boiled down to. It was, it was just a target-rich environment.
Yeah, it's like going to a bar as a rescue swimmer, right? So I'm only kidding. Yeah. But, I hate to say it like that, but it was just a unique experience to be part of, and I'm glad I was there. Did it make my career? No. I mean, it was probably some of the, it was a lot of daytime hoisting for us. Did some night stuff, but nothing that got the hair to, the thing was people wanted out of there, and they weren't scared to be bullish about it. And if you could calm them down, I felt like a social worker out there, calm people down, get them out. But it definitely was, it was a really cool thing to be part of,
Nice.
I downplay it a little bit, but we just have to. It's just, it's just the way it is. So. A lot of heroes were made out of there. A lot of DFCs, a lot of air medals. I didn't get one. I got an achievement medal. I didn't really write. I just thought it was just really cool to be part of it. I didn't really, write about, things that I maybe should have tried to get an air medal. Didn't mean anything to me. Just helping that town was pretty cool. So
that was, and that is, and it's, I don't think any of us those that went down there, I ended up backfilling at Elizabeth City. But for those that went down there, that's what it was about. It wasn't about, what medal am I going to come back with? What's going to make me look good? It was about getting the job done. And, I went and I backfilled for East City so that they could go down and take the 60, which is going to be the more effective platform. And, I think that's one of the things that makes the Coast Guard what it is, that it's, we are adaptable. We do some amazing stuff. And I don't think we get a fraction of the credit that we should for what we do.
I mean, to put it like this, Kodiak, Cape Cod, Houston were great, but the best search and rescue in the world is right in Elizabeth City. People don't realize that. It's a big vacuum for the world where everybody comes in and out of the biggest Navy port, some of the biggest ports come right through our AOR. And we share part of that with Atlantic City and Savannah. But for the most part, we're the big, we're the big iron, when you talk to a Marine Corps pilot, H50, 53, they're like big iron. What are you like, medium iron? Like, what are we, are you a putter? So the Marines always make fun of us in the Navy, but I call it A60 God's Chariot. I love being stationed here in Elizabeth City. It was the best I wish I had stayed 20 years in Elizabeth City because there's always action going on in Elizabeth City. I don't know what it is, but it's just a hotbed for SAR. I mean, Columbia,
that's where the graveyard of the Atlantic is. Yep. So it's, there's a reason.
It's far enough south, people are boating all year long.
Yep, and that's it. And that's hunters and, crazy stuff. And I also liked it because if I did crash, like I was doing survival, as rescue swimmers, ASTs, air survival technicians, every year we do a lecture to the air crews about what if you crash, where do you wind up? Here's your signal of I'm like, hey man, if you crash anywhere in our area of operation, I suggest you, if you're able to walk to the nearest house, get yourself a hot cup of coffee, and give the 911 a call. That's what I would do because, I shouldn't say it like that, but it's the truth. It's not like Kodiak where you got 3 days, somebody's going to come get you. You're going to be sitting out there for an hour or two.
So we're now over to Elizabeth City. That is a really big, as far as on the Atlantic coast, that's a big air station. And there's a lot that goes on there. You got your A school there for the rescue swimmers. You got your C-130s, you've got your H-60s. And so tell us a little bit about what's it like over at E-City.
So coming full circle in my career, going back to Elizabeth City. So the pool is now actually, they cracked the pool here. They're trying to fix it. Lowest bidder, right? So lowest bidder is a big crack in the pool. Oh, the roof's caving in because of the wave generator. So the school is actually in Petaluma, California now. And so you're putting, this is my mind. Okay. And I thought it's just everybody we moved the AST school out to Petaluma. Pretty wild place to be. We love going to EMT school there, have a great time at it. But to make a long story short, they're going to fix a pool and they're going to come back here. So eventually, from what I'm hearing, but it is what it is. I'll come back to Elizabeth City. Is to be on the other side of it, watching the students go through was awesome. You see a class come in, they see you at the exchange, they recognize you, whether if you're on TV or whatever, however they recognize you from a case, and you're able to go talk to them about search and rescue cases, and just an awesome place to be. And the search and rescue here is like shooting fish in a barrel. Like you're going to get something every year. We've been out there where the Navy said, we can't do it. We got to send a Coast Guard. And that's huge ego building. So, but,
and you're not wrong. It's, I've done 3 medevacs off of naval vessels.
Yep. Yeah. So you guys are probably tired of hearing me tell them all these sea stories. So there I was. And
no. That's why you're here,
baby.
Yeah. So, Elizabeth City, also, I really feel I did some of my best mentoring as a senior rescue swimmer, seeing new guys come up, teaching them, seeing them they made me better. the younger guys that they're so in shape, and they're just teaching you how to work out, and my body didn't hurt as much. I came out of the city, I felt like $1,000,000. It just was a great shop to be in. It was the city, and probably the highlight of my tour. I say it to every air station I was at, but Elizabeth City to me is home now, for lack of a better term. And it's funny. I was at a wine thing. I was out with my wife or somebody, where I was doing something, and I was at this wine place, and I know what it was. I was doing work for the guy that owns it. I had to pick a check up from him in my own business, and there was a Russian swimmer party going on there, and I didn't recognize one of them, and one kid recognized me, and we shook hands, but it was just weird. It's like you just kind of get passed over by time, because they're new and they're excited to be where they're at. They're all with their wives. It was pretty wild to realize now I'm the old guy.
Yeah, it is kind of odd when all of a sudden you realize you're sort of at the other end of the spectrum, and people are looking to you for advice and for guidance.
Yep. So, but as a swimmer, we had talked about the double, picking the pilots up offshore. That's a very rare thing that we do. Fortunately, I was one of the guys that was able to go out and be part of one of them cases. You can go into more detail about it if you guys. I'm sure you don't want to hear about it, right? I know you guys don't want to hear anything about it. So, kidding. Right.
No, so you kind of unfortunately got broken up, but I think we should be able to get it. But so you're talking about the case where you picked up 2 F-18 pilots, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It was, it was,
so let's go there.
So as you transition to a chief petty officer in a Coast Guard, which I hated, they take away your first name and they take away, you're going to go to an air station or you're going to go somewhere else. I wound up staying here and going to the A school. I got orders cut back to rescue swimmer school, going to rescue swimmer school, which I wasn't too fond of. I didn't like I guess I was being greedy. I was having a great time flying.
Right.
I was doing a lot of search and rescue, and I loved being on that hook. To go to a non-operational command for my first time in my whole career, besides training, was something that I didn't want to do. But God gave me the grand finale to send off. He said, I'm going to let you go out and pick up some aviators with an excellent crew. I was sitting there in the shop. I think it was a Thursday, and a SAR alarm went off for two F-18s that crashed into each other. They clipped wings. The pilots do their hand. You guys all pilot go like going like this. It's like, so it looked like Kung Fu, and they're
what they were doing is they were coming into what's called the merge. So they were probably doing ACM, and they were coming into the merge. And as they were coming into the merge, the wings clipped, and it was downhill from there. No pun intended.
They got shot out over the mighty Atlantic Ocean at a high rate of speed. 4 pilots. So we get the call. I'm not on duty. I had to be in a shop. I think I was actually packing my gear up to kind of start condensing all my trinkets and all my love me stuff over the years, because we had lockers.
Right.
And they go, we need a second swimmer, and I was the only one there. I'm like, well, I guess I'm going. So go walking out and get in the helicopter, and excellent flight out, quick, fast. We stripped the helicopter down. We had, I think, 2 litters in there, no pump. I think we didn't have a basket either. And we get pull up on scene, and you can see the little green sea dive marker. They're down there, and the 2 pilots were getting picked up by a Good Samaritan boat, but they were pretty far away. They were like 10 or 15 miles away. So something like that. When they got shot out, I don't know how it worked, but shit goes everywhere, right? So it was a yard sale out there of multi-million-dollar airplanes. By the way, there's a couple of H-53s over us, a couple of C-130s. I mean, everybody went there to see what was going on, but nobody could.
And that's what needs to also. Right? Yeah. It's
going to
all
be
of a sudden everybody's converging on where the midair was, and we're going to have another one.
Yeah. So you're looking around and pull up into a hover, and you see these 2 cats down there, and you're like, okay, this is go time. And
nice.
This is what we trained for. A school, we did this, and I almost failed out of A school because of it. Multiple pilots. So you come swimming up. I think we got lower down or free fall. I can't remember. This is like 9 years ago. I can't remember what I had for breakfast. That's the problem with getting old. But anyway, get down to the pilot somehow, some shape or form of some, and we make contact with our swimmer. we kind of work through what's going to go on. We're going to litter them out of there. They've been shot out at a high rate of speed. We're worried about back injuries. And they're like, hey, we're fine. We just want to be hoisted. I'm like, no, you're going to go up in a litter. That's what we're going to do it. So, we clear them, do the checks, clear them up, put them in a litter. They go up. The other one goes up. And the boat had pulled up with the other guys on board. And the other swimmer swam over to the boat. I said, I'll take them into the hospital because we knew they were okay. So I get up there and I do the assessment in the litter. And they're obviously unbuckling themselves. I'm like, take your boots off, so I can check your pulse motor sensor. Because I didn't realize at the time, these guys wanted to walk out of the helicopter. I wasn't going to allow it. I mean, next thing I know, the guy has a twist the wrong way and his back breaks. Like somebody died. So they're all sitting in the helicopter and we're all giving water. I actually gave the guy a bottle of water. I think it was in my bag for like a month because I was packing my trinkets up. And he's like, took a sip. He's like, this is terrible. I'm like, I think that's piss. He's like, oh my God. I was just kidding. But his name was Herc. The guy's name was, that was his backseater. And so but the thing was, when we left there, we were going to the hospital and everybody had found out there'd been a helicopter crash. So we go up to Centera Norfolk General, which is a trauma hospital, and right across the river from Portsmouth Naval. And they go to Centera because they heard the guys are pretty bad off. I'm like, these guys aren't bad off. But okay, whatever, There had to be 1,000 people lined up to watch this evolution. And I remember I told the pilot, I said, sir, if any landing you have to stick and do it right, it's got to be this one. Because if not, we're going to be all over the world in a fireball. You know what I mean? So he's like, I'm like, no pressure, right? So
no pressure. Don't fuck this one up.
Don't fuck this one up, sir. So of course we freaking, perfect landing, and when you come in there, you're coming down below buildings, you're blowing bums off the street, and people are getting we're breaking windshields. It's just epic rock star stuff, and nobody cares. I think we blew over a antenna, one of them big the big umbrella antennas on the news van. Yep, no. Channel 7 news vans. We broke that, and so we land in there and they come out with stretchers. These guys trying to walk. You got to ride on the stretcher. So they ride him in on the stretcher. And these guys are pissed at me, Well, they get in and all these nurses are lined up. All these nurses and docs line up and they're stripping these guys down. I mean, they're putting stuff in the guys' bodies. I'm like, oh my God, I screwed these guys so bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and, they're getting the full trauma treatment.
Yeah, they're getting fingers up their butt and everything. I'm like, man, what a good time for these guys. I'm like, oh my God, I screwed these guys.
Not only do you have to suffer the indignity of punching out of your multi-million-dollar jet, getting rescued by the Coast Guard, but then you're going to get rectal probed by the ER attending to make sure that you get good sphincter tone.
Yep.
And you don't have a spinal cord injury.
Yep. I think that even the janitor was in there. The house cleaning crew was even in the hospital with these poor guys.
God, how did we get here from there?
Elbow to elbow. Yeah. And they're all looking for a pass down from me. And I look at them, I got these two guys, right? And I go, oh, yeah, they did some pretty cool stuff, because I was a medic. And I'm like, what am I going to say? They got shot out of a helicopter. I got shot out of a cannon.
There's nothing to report, really. I mean,
I'm like,
as an EMT basic, you might have had a different story, but if you're a medic and you're used to seeing people blown apart, you're going, I don't know, they're all intact. They punched out of the plane.
They're cutting their flight suits off, and I grabbed their name tags, and long story short, and the next two guys come in, and they just walk off the helicopter, smiling and waving and shit. It was just funny, and because there's two helicopters, the 15 came in, 6015 came in behind us, and they're all waving and everything else, and I think. I don't know if I rode back in 06 somehow. And, it was funny because that was my last case, that was I knew it was over, and I hate to say it, I went out, it
was your swan song.
Yeah. What is it? It's better to fade out I forget it, but
no, you did a Seinfeld. You went out on a high note,
Yep.
There you go.
Yeah. Leave while you're up, never when you're down. It's like poker, right?
Yeah.
So there you go.
I left while I was up, and, I got back to the air station. I always saw Top Gun. I'm thinking, oh, man, we're going to come in and there's going to be fire trucks spraying water and everything. We get there. I'm not lying. It was hot as hell out, but it was a ghost town. I mean, the doors were shut.
Yeah.
Nobody was there. And I go, sir, it was me, the flight mechanic, and the two pilots. I go, I forget the pilot's name. I can remember his face. I go, I thought they'd have a little bit more fanfare here for us. You know what I mean? And nothing. Nothing. I think we got out, started unpacking the helicopter like 10 minutes before anybody came out,
Yeah.
Don't
and then,
let
of course,
the door hit you in the ass on the way out, Chief.
Yeah, you guys got to do the through flight.
Yeah. Hey, get that. Hey, swimmer, get your plane back together. This thing got to go back out, because there was actually 3 helicopters out there. We had 3 helicopters out there that day. But so then everybody came out and they realized we came back, and news crews started showing up, and I mean, it was just for an old guy like me to go out like that was pretty damn cool.
That is cool.
That is awesome. So you mentioned you took their name tags.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do our swimmers hold on to any souvenirs or anything from those that we might have helped?
I might have that. I got in some trouble for that. We got yelled at because we were stole government property or something. But the guy actually gave them to us. Yeah. But I remember he was getting it cut off anyway. And I'm like, hey, look, I'm taking these because it's what I'm going to do. I hate to say it. It was a good way to go out.
There you go. Well, fantastic. Well, thinking of going out, I think, unfortunately, it's time for us to land this airplane and go out. I got
one last thing here, Pete. And
okay.
That's this.
So what he put up was a sticker that said the U.S. Coast Guard, because jet pilots need heroes too. And that day, those guys did. So, and you were indeed a hero, Chief. So we want to thank you for your sacrifice and your service to the nation. And I know the people whom you saved are grateful for you sticking your ass out on the line to pull them back.
I don't know what to say on that, but thank you. It's my pleasure, right? It was just...
I know that you're humble about it, but you are indeed a hero, and you did stick your ass out on the line to save people's lives, and that's a big damn deal. So we really appreciate that. Man.
Yeah.
From one coastie to another, you have done an exceptional job and represented the Coast Guard in the best possible light. So thank you for that. Thank you for your service.
Thanks, sir.
Well, we got a giveaway going on, Pete.
Yeah, we do. So I screwed it up in June. Man, I've just been having all kinds of tech problems. So in June, I didn't get the URL right. So people trying to go to so there I was.us/giveaway. We're getting to the closed beach towel giveaway. This month, however, I've extended another month. I've got the URL correct now. So go to therewas.us/giveaway and be one of 4 people to win a copy of Takeoffs and Landings, Memories of God, Family, and Country by Alger Pete Peterson, who spent 30 years in the Air Force from 54 to 84. And it's a great read. Unfortunately, Pete Peterson passed earlier this year and was not able to become a guest on our show. But his grandson passed that along to us so that we can share that amazing book with you folks. So there's was.us/giveaway. Help share the show, spread the word, and in doing so, you earn points. And the person with the most points, the 4 people with the most points, get a copy of the book at the end of July.
Thank you to Badass.
BDSAviationPhotography.com. Yeah, amazing. His photos are nothing short of amazing.
And he's even got some Coast Guard pictures there, too.
A few of them, yeah. He done did.
And then we got also give us a rate. If you give us 5 stars, go over to so there I was.us/rate and give us a 5-star rating. And if you can't give us a 5-star, then tell us what we need to do to fix it. And if you still insist on that, then give the 3-star rating to somebody else. And if you wanted to get a hold of us, how would we do that, Pete?
Well, you could email us. So there it was.us is the domain, but you've got Fig, Sticks, Bago, or Repeat at so there I was.us. Any one of those will get a letter to us, and we're happy to respond. Happy to hear from you. Always love the feedback.
So, yeah. And thanks to Bago for running our Facebook group.
Indeed.
Which is one of the few areas that's running smoothly. And then we got our merch store. So there I was.us/merch. And we got everything from t-shirts, beach towels, bikinis, mugs, hats. And like I said, the bikinis. With any luck, you might get to see Fig in a bikini. Hopefully not.
Exactly. And, well, you can kind of hear him going in the background there. None other than the folks we had on the show. I think it'll be a month ago now by the time this show comes out. The Dos Gringos. Not 1, but 2. Count them. Dos Gringos. That's about it. I can't think of nothing else except until next week, stay safe and I don't know. Don't grab the hoist until the ground's in the water. It'll ruin your day.
make sure you're below 30 feet when you're going to free fall.
Well, there I was, crossing the pond, and you could see that I wasn't exactly fond of all the shit I was wearing on that day. Now an F-16 is cramped enough, but it's even worse with all that stuff supposed to save your life. But we knew there was no way. 'Cause when you're going down in the North Atlantic, man, it's over.
What did he say?
Said it's over.
There will come a time when you might have to decide who lives and dies out there. It's a terrible responsibility, but it is one you will have to make as a rescue swimmer. The bigger reality is it's also something you're going to have to live with as a human being. There will come a time when you're going to have to say no. The most important person to keep alive is yourself. You'll be facing crews from 5 to 20, all saying, "Save me, save me." They're looking for a miracle.